Hello horror hounds, welcome to my horror house. I've been contemplating for a while revisiting the Conjuring franchise, which I know is a franchise of highs and lows, but mainly as a way for me, as an excuse to revisit the original film, The Conjuring, which I was very lukewarm on at the time of release and wanted to come back to it and see if I had warmed to it somewhat. So, knowing that I'm setting myself up for some real stinkers and some good stuff as well, we're going to look at the Conjuring franchise, beginning, of course, with The Conjuring. I was a real stick in the mud when this first came out. I went to see it at the cinema, of course. People were raving about it. It was a real headline grabber. And I sat there as a grumpy old sod, honestly thinking, no. Why is everyone going crazy for this? It's just ripping off the Amityville Horror. It's ripping off bits of Poltergeist. It's ripping off bits of The Exorcist, and all of those films are much better. And this is just a sort of shallow shell that looks pretty and is bolting on bits of other films in different configurations, and it's doing nothing special. Nah. And I watched the other films that came out, and I guess in comparison to some of the low points in the franchise, it's nice to come back to The Conjuring and see that it does what it does pretty efficiently and pretty effectively. There is absolutely nothing wrong with a new generation of horror fans coming through and this being one of their big tentpole movies, and not having seen The Exorcist or Amityville Horror before and getting some really good chills and scares and jumps from this film. Nothing wrong with it whatsoever. You don't come into this world having already seen everything and heard everything and read everything. You got to make your way into the things you love. You follow your own path, and no one can tell you that it's right or wrong. So, watching it again a couple of nights ago, I found that I could cast my grumpy hat aside and just enjoy it for what it is, which is essentially a pretty effective and efficient ghost train of a movie, like you get at the fairground rides. The train comes out the front, rattles along, you sit in it, the bar goes down, and then it takes you through the curtains, and then you go around and things jump out at you, and noises and whiz bangs and puffs of air to make you scream through the cobwebs, and then you come back out again and everything's fine. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with a movie that sets itself up to do that. I would suggest that there are still some elements of The Conjuring that could do with tweaking, could do with streamlining a bit. One of the impressions I got when I first saw it at the cinema still holds true today. I do believe, especially now knowing what the Conjuring franchise and sort of the expanded universe has become, I still very strongly get the impression that James Wan was there going, right, this is my chance to pay homage to all of these films from the past that I've loved, and I'm just going to throw absolutely fucking everything at it. This film does pretty much have the kitchen sink in it, and it's pretty rammed as a result. I think it does add to the ghost train feeling, but it does also make me think, just breathe a little bit. I mean, the film's almost 2 hours long, and it is too long. Had, I think, James Wan known that there would have been sequels, that this would have been a massive success, he might have kept some of those scares for later films. He might have let this film be a little bit more stripped down, let it breathe somewhat. But as it is, things come at you thick and fast, and you can't deny that the escalation of the haunting stroke possessions works. And do you know what? If one scare doesn't work, another one will be along in another few minutes to have a go at you. And most of them are pretty good, I've got to be honest. Someone tugging the girl's foot from the end of the bed and her thinking it's her sister and it's not her sister, one of the sisters seeing something behind the door that the other sister can't see. It's right behind you. The hide and clap sequences. I mean, bravo to him for getting 2 decent scares out of that. I mean, hide and clap is played 3 times in this movie, and you would think, or at least the hide and clap thing is referenced 3 times. The game is played twice, and then the ghost comes out from behind Lily Taylor and does that, which is a spectacular jump, a spectacular scare. So to wring as much tension and then release as you can out of just something as simple as the sound of clapping hands is superb. If you don't like that kind of standard stuff, you've got the music box, which appears all the time you crank it, and then look in the mirror, and then over your shoulder you'll see the apparition there. You've got one of the characters, one of the young girls in the haunted family sleepwalking, which is always scary. So there's some really lo-fi stuff, like a character sleepwalking, like a character peering down to look under their bed. Never look under your bed while you're on the bed. Get off the bed, go to the other side of the room and crouch down and look under the bed from a safe distance. But no, you've got to sit on the bed and then slowly lean your head over so the camera can go over. Always effective. He puts ghosts and appearances in places you wouldn't expect. He's kind of a master of that. He does that really well in the Insidious movies as well. On top of a cupboard, so now floating directly above the mum's face, or the hanging body where you only see the feet and they're moving around. To be honest, he's been great at that kind of stuff all the time. There's stuff like that in Dead Silence, which I think is really effective. And when James Wan wants to create a scare like that, he's really good at it. Some of my other reasons for being grumpy about the film originally, I can cast aside now. I do hem and haw about lionizing the Warrens quite so much, and I've decided on this watch through not to bring any of that baggage with it. It's going to be particularly difficult, I feel, for the 3rd Conjuring movie, The Devil Made Me Do It, and I might touch upon that a little in that film when I get back to it. So, yeah, I'm really not going to let my real-world opinions of the real-world Warrens affect my enjoyment of this film to as much of an extent as I can sort of counter for that. And as I mentioned earlier, the film is absolutely too long. There's a whole section once the Warrens are at the house and really deep into investigating it, that the entity from the house goes back to scare and threaten the Warrens' kids, so they have to dash back to sort of save her. There's a whole section there where that entity has taken the Annabelle doll out of its case, which brings the wonderful image of that creepy figure sitting in the rocking chair with Annabelle, and Annabelle looking back at you over the shoulder. It's a great image, but then Annabelle's sort of suddenly back in the case. Was that real? Did any of that happen? It only really, for narrative purposes, happened to get the Warrens away from the house so that then there could be a big emergency, so they could then almost immediately rush back to the house for a final showdown. And all of that really is flab that could get lost. It's just there so that we can have an exciting cinematic race to save someone. Twice, a race to save the daughter, and then a race back to save the family. Erase the races. The camera works really great. I mean, James Wan knows what to do with a camera. He's not subtle about it. I mean, the story builds up, and then the camera gets really beefy. I mean, he's flexing his muscles when the young family move in at first, and we're swooshing around the house, being introduced to the house and the family all at once, and inside and outside. And then we settle down a little bit until the hauntings and the possessions start ramping up again. And then, the camera's really kinetic, really beefy. I like it a lot. It matches with the vibe that he's going for. A sort of carnival fairground. I'm going to scare you. You're here to be scared. Strap yourself in and let's go. And at that level, it's really good. Hannah stopped watching it about halfway through. She said, "This is too scary." So I can see why The Conjuring at the time absolutely had sort of breakout appeal. Not just, I think, diehard horror fans went to go and see it. Lots of people who don't necessarily call horror their first love like every once in a while to be scared. Everyone likes a roller coaster every once in a while, a fairground ride every once in a while. And these were kind of safe thrills and chills. And whilst everyone else was having a good time, I was just sat there. Just in 2013, I think, just going, Amityville Horror, no, now they're doing The Exorcist, no, now they're doing Poltergeist. It's just kind of what they do, and it's part of the fun of it, and there's really no use being miserable about it. So they had a hit on their hands, and I guess they didn't necessarily have a straight up sequel that they could get in the can next. So the very next thing to come along is a spin-off, and understandably that would be from the breakout cursed item in their room of cursed items. What a nice little touch. Just a room full of cursed items and haunted items and occult objects. A little bit, I guess, like the Friday the 13th TV series and the like. I mean, what a nice little rich wealth of things to pull from. And it's kind of a no-brainer once The Conjuring was a hit that we would go with Annabelle, which will be next up.
I bid you welcome.
I welcome you to my house.
Welcome to my house.
Welcome to my home.